The Charlotte Hornets make a new hire. We give you a player profile on Miles Bridges this time. And yes, we rummage through the sicko satchel with David Walker joining us in his weekly appearance. All today, Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz. We live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. As always, there's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, Every Hornets Boxscore. There you can also find his subtext. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on the radio, Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. And there's David Walker. You can follow him on Twitter at David B. Walker. And when David joins us, we usually, at this point, make up an excuse to talk about Miles Bridges. And since we haven't done the player profile for Miles, we thought today would be the day. Yes, we skipped quite a few days last week. We skipped yesterday. We waited for you, David, as we have for a lot of the Miles Bridges news, good or bad. How are you feeling talking another day about Miles?
Makes perfect sense. It's so comfortable at this point, guys. Doug, is this a Memphis Chicks hat?
Yeah, I think they're called the Redbirds now.
Okay, that's probably better, more appropriate.
Yet they still have some of that merch in the store that I felt was not going to go on my head. But yes, the Memphis Redbirds.
Well,
okay, cool. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. How long? They've been the Redbirds for a long time, right? Like, I mean, how?
Yeah, I don't keep up with what are they, AA now?
I think they're AAA. I mean, I didn't know we were going to do a little AAA ball talk, but this is like David often likes to make the joke about me being the youngest. Now, we need to go ahead and turn this on you and make you the oldest today. Like the Chicks, I can't even remember when they've been the Chicks like in forever. I think they've always been the Memphis Redbirds as far as my lifetime goes, as far as I've known.
That's fair.
Okay.
I just remember Bo Jackson used to, there used to be a baseball card or two with the Memphis Chicks.
Would be cool
though. So Bo's there, yeah.
Anyway. They used to be the Dixie Chicks, but now they're just the Chicks, and they changed their name a while ago. All right, Miles Bridges. Let's get into the player profile for Miles. David, we can start with you. We usually do the positive, and then we do the negative in the last segment. Yeah. We reel you in, we give you the medicine you need at the end because of you just need to hear the bad stuff sometimes. Doug, what did you like from Miles this year?
Well, he was available. Other than the trip to Toronto where the Mounties wouldn't let him across the border, he was available for every game this season. And we can't take that for granted in a year when so much star power was in street clothes. And he, took a lot of response. It wasn't just that he was available. It's that he also took a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, both offensively and defensively. There were many nights when he was guarding the best wing. There were many nights when he was taking the most shots. Now, we can get into that shot selection and maybe in a little bit later and some of what went wrong. But you cannot question the man's commitment to actually playing basketball for this team this season.
Well, yeah. And, the off the court outside of that Toronto thing, once, the last couple incidents settled down, there wasn't a whole lot, right, of just off the court distraction. So to your point, like he was playing a lot and he was, until Brandon Miller kind of took the reins, I mean, he was their go-to guy, especially with some of those guys out, career high in scoring. Maybe not as efficient as you like, but certainly they needed someone to score, and he was giving them 21 points a night. And that's nothing to shake your head at. It just, it didn't result in a lot of wins. It was still frustrating for people to watch. But for them, like, obviously this was a big show me year. I mean, for Miles too, obviously, right? So We'll see what happens, but I mean, at least they saw, and at least he showed that, he can still give you 20 points a night. That's not nothing in today's NBA.
Yeah, guys, he reminded me of like a more well-equipped PJ Washington from last year, where PJ had to do so many different things because of all of the injuries. He was by far the most healthy player on the roster. It's not like Miles was by far the most healthy player. Brandon Miller, actually, as far as the ratio of getting as many minutes and playing many games, that probably belonged to Brandon Miller. But Miles even told you during his exit day interview he was among the league leaders in minutes played in the entire association. So the fact that Miles had to do so many different things because he didn't have LaMelo by his side. Terry Rozier eventually got traded. Gordon Hayward was hurt and then eventually got traded. So Miles Bridges is more capable of being that go-to offensive guy than what PJ Washington is. And so I think with Miles, like, there's still some inefficiency that we can get to a little bit later on, but this is not the role. Like, it's not tailor-made for what you want him to do. Now, we did probably answer some questions that you could legitimately ask about Miles being that number one guy or maybe that number two guy, and I think he probably can't do that. It's probably not fair to answer that fully with all of the injuries, but you want to bring him maybe a little less usage once LaMelo and Brandon are out there. If they bring Miles back, like I think we guess that they will, anything can happen in the offseason. But if it's LaMelo and Brandon and Miles, I would have Miles Bridges as the guy with the third highest usage rate, right? So I think that's probably appropriate for him on a team where you have two guys ahead of him that you're looking to get into the playoffs and compete. If that's your first checkpoint for success, if that's what you need to reach before you actually win a series, I think Miles in that third banana role, that's what I'm comfortable with him being. And we saw some nice moments. We saw some moments where shot selection was pretty terrible. Missed a lot of bunnies this year. That's uncharacteristic of him. Like, that's not usually what he was doing. The 3-point shot, we had an outlier season from him a few years back.
Hold on. You're getting into some of what went wrong now. Let's save it. Save it for that segment.
I'll tell you the rest about it later. Well, but those are some of the things about Miles.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this season for him really came down to showing what he is and what he isn't. And if we want to focus on what he is, he's a guy that even if he's your third option, is capable of, on a given night, doing what he did against Toronto in February when he went 45, 5, and 5, one of only two players to do that in Hornets history, the other one being Kemba Walker. So he is capable on a given night, and he's going to give you multiple of those games every season where he just goes absolutely nuclear and can win you a game single-handedly, can help you win a game single-handedly. And when LaMelo was healthy, and he first came back, he was hitting some clutch shots as well. It was only when LaMelo went out and you got him more really ultimate volume that some of the efficiency started to, really show up. Efficiency issues started to show up. So, I think under given circumstances, there are plenty of arguments to make for the Hornets to bring Miles Bridges back from an on-the-court perspective. It's just going to be about dollar amount.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, he's got to be your third option. I mean, really. And I think that's where, like, I don't know if he's the third option on a finals team. That may be the ceiling if that's your option, but maybe not, depending on who your other two are. But I think clarity is one of the biggest positives to come out of this season, to your point, Walker, because they know that now, right? They know who this guy is. They know it's not a first option or a second option. So when it comes time, now there's a lot of other factors that's going to come into how much he gets paid this offseason, one of them being he didn't get paid for basically 2 seasons. So he's going to be looking to recoup some of that, I'm sure. But they know where the market might be in that respect, right? And they're in a position now where they actually do have 2 younger guys that they can make as their first and second options. That's not something they can say with confidence maybe ever, since he's been here. So we'll get into some of the things that weren't so great. But I think the clarity on what kind of player he is and what they can expect from him is a huge takeaway.
Doug, any more positives before we move on?
Just well, again, when he's on and scoring, he has multiple ways to score. He is, I mean, if his three ball is going, and we saw him hit like 5 threes in multiple games this season, 5 or more threes in multiple games this season. You mentioned the missed bunnies. I thought that evened out a little bit as the season went on, and that's going to be a good thing. You know, he can score at each level. The mid-range thing, and I think strangely, that was something that it seemed like after the season he made mention of maybe Clifford sort of challenging him to expand his game into that arena. So look, if he continues to improve on that, okay, if we're staying positive here, and he continues to work on that, if this was really the first time he's expanded into that part of his game and he works on it in the offseason, well, then he becomes an even more dangerous scorer.
It'll be interesting to see the decision they make this offseason, and not even just if they bring him back or if they let him go, but whoever signs him, what the dollar amount's going to be. Miles has always been tricky, or at least the last couple of years, trying to dictate what dollar amount he's going to get, and that's going to continue this offseason. Let's move on to a new hire for the Charlotte Hornets coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
They hire a new vice president, not quite president, Jeff Peterson style. We're going vice president once more. We tell you who that is in just a moment here on Locked On Hornets. Before we do that, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by DoorDash. If you want to make mom smile, start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands that she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. If she has a sweet tooth, if she is a tech enthusiast, if she is a beauty connoisseur, or if she's outdoorsy, it doesn't matter. No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and plenty more
Walker,
with
what's your mom
DoorDash.
into? Walker, what's your mom into?
Very much into nature. Very much into nature. And so she likes hiking. We can get her, so maybe we get her some workout wears that she can wear on hiking.
Sure,
Thank you for taking an interest in my mother.
No worry.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Walker's mom smile.
Yeah, if you want to make my mom smile, then I will not tell you any of her information because that's creepy.
Too late.
And Doug just let us off with that. Get all of your Mother's Day gifts, not mine, your Mother's Day gifts all in one place. Get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 plus on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Doug, stay away from my mom. We're Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, so the Hornets make a new hire, and it is not a head coach. We are trying to figure out if we're going to get J.J. Redick as the head coach or Charles Lee. Real quickly, just setting up camp for just a moment here. I don't know about the timelines for you guys, but it's getting very interesting. The people that are saying no thank you to J.J. Redick, the people that are here for it, vice versa with Charles Lee. I feel like we'll remember this decision. Or the divisiveness with Charles Lee or J.J. Redick, because it feels like this is a pretty polarizing decision, more so than a James Borrego versus Jay Larranaga could be, or Kenny Atkinson, right? Like, you know.
To be honest, I'm shocked by it, to be honest. I mean,
sure.
I know everyone loves JJ, and I know that everyone knows him, and I think that's a big part of playing into it, but I just can't get over, the massive lack of resume. And like I said last week, he might turn out to be awesome, and he knows basketball. But for this franchise, for right now, it's crazy to me that you stack those two up, and it's really even split to me. But I mean, I get it, because a lot of people like JJ right now, and he talks a good game for sure.
Is that your timeline, Doug? Does it seem pretty polarizing to you?
Oh, well, I thought when you said timeline initially, I thought you meant just like the clock is ticking, right? Because L.A. just got bounced. Phoenix is gone. Who else? New Orleans, they're out. And so all of these teams, they're going to start to look at their coaching situation and evaluate it. So if they want to make Lee the hire, I would say, A, get on it, and B, make sure you get pen on paper. Let's not have another Kenny Atkinson situation, please.
Is it like hurry up and hire Charles Lee, or is it hurry up and hire J.J. Redick if that's your guy? I mean, J.J. Redick doesn't host a podcast with Lee. It's LeBron. And if the Lakers are moving on from Darvin Ham, maybe that's J.J. It makes more sense for
LeBron.
Phoenix.
JJ.
He played for New Orleans. I'm just saying, like, I don't, and Willie Green's not going anywhere.
Now, look, that's what I'm saying. If you want to go Redick and then draft Bronny and you have this master plan to get a year or two out of LeBron James in Charlotte, then you know what? I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. It makes zero sense from like a long-term it would make no sense relative to what we've heard, like sustainable success, long-term success from the current ownership group. But I'm telling you, hedge fund bros, prepare for the zag. You just never know. I would be here for it. I'm here for chaos. I'm here for 2 years of LeBron James. I know it sounds crazy, but if that's what they're into, I'm into it too. I'm ready to get crazy.
All right. We'll see if the Hornets get crazy. I don't think they got crazy here, but I think they just made a smart hire. It was Jake Fisher who reported just yesterday
we're
that the
going
Hornets
fishing?
are. Yeah, we are. I forgot. Yes. Sorry.
We got a big one.
I think we got a big one. I like the fish anyway. The Hornets are hiring Patrick Harrell as Charlotte's new vice president of basketball insights and analysis, league sources told Yahoo Sports. Harrell comes from the NBA league office, data science department, where he led game scheduling optimization. So if you want more information on this, clearly you do with you sleeping. Anchorage Man on Twitter, Seth Partnow, who used to work for the Milwaukee Bucks, he wrote the mid-range theory, just smart basketball mind out there on Twitter. He said, among other things, Patrick was one of the driving forces behind the hackathon competitions the NBA ran for several years, which produced probably 20 to 25 future analytics staffers around the league. And he's also, in recent seasons, Harrell was heavily involved in producing the regular season schedule, which has increasingly used data analysis to, among other things, limit back-to-backs and minimize travel miles. So this guy was in charge of some pretty big scheduling in the NBA. He was in charge of a lot of important decisions within the association at the top, which is interesting to me. And now he's here with the Charlotte Hornets. I like the hire. I don't know exactly what it is he's going to do and how the analytics are going to help, but I like the hire. I like having that smart guy in my organization. Doug, what about you?
Here's what I like. I did some cyber stalking of Patrick Harrell, and I went to his LinkedIn, and he looks like 25, 30 years old, like it's another Jeff Peterson. It's getting younger. Yeah. I like when the Hornets, and this hasn't happened, I would say probably I haven't felt this way since the Rich Cho era. And Rich Cho came in and sort of revamped really founded their analytics department, because pre-Cho, the Bobcats, had a couple of like Apple II computers running Oregon Trail. That was their basketball analytics department, right? And so Cho came in, and we don't know really what happened post-Cho, but I'm glad that the Hornets are hiring someone that doesn't look like they could be my grandfather. That's nice. That's great, because I want youth, I want creativity, I want analytics. Although I will say, if they wanted basketball insights and analysis, they could have hired me for cheaper. I didn't go to Princeton like this guy did, but I could have come in and told them, hey, do something. That's the University of Gastonia analysis. Hey, why don't you go out and get some players? Do something.
That's your job. That's your elevator pitch. Hey guys, just do something.
I think it would. I think it might work. I think it might work.
I like this guy.
Right there. That's a zag. Yeah, man. This guy is super young. He definitely has never heard of the Memphis Chicks. I can guarantee you that much. But here's the thing. I like bringing in as many smart people in the building as we possibly can, because as we were talking about the Miles Bridges stuff and the season in review and analyzing what works for this team, it's got to be one of the most difficult teams to figure out, because they've had so many injuries. Their main superstar player hasn't played. They've got all these different pieces that fit together. Like, how do you accurately evaluate even somebody like a Miles Bridges for any other situation, because he was asked to do so much on this team, as is everybody else. Like, for years, they've asked guys to play probably a level up than is optimal. And so figuring out how to best use these pieces when they're all healthy, I mean, to me, is a tough job. It makes everything tougher. It makes drafting tougher. It makes paying guys tougher. It makes selecting free agents, if anyone want to come here, more difficult. Like, figuring out how to work with a team that is just never available is a tough job. So if he can use any of those, Outlook calendar skills that he used in the league office, and somehow twist those to make give them a lens to see things more clearly, it's great.
Well,
maybe the ACC.
I hope he can get in there and like show them a calendar and say, hey, maybe we don't sacrifice, so many home games at the beginning of the season or around Christmas time just to have a bunch of home games in the spring. Like, it's super nice for home fans who get to come out and see a few warm weather games at the end of the year, but ultimately it really kind of hurts your chances. I don't know how much of an effect he's going to have on any of that, but if he can get in there and use whatever data analytics skills he has to improve their ability to draft players, to improve who they go and seek out. Because, look, they're not going to compete for the major free agents in the league. We know that. But championships and championship runs and playoff runs and deep playoff runs aren't built necessarily on going out and always being able to find that, that wrinkle or that big star. It is making these little moves around the edges and filling your team, because you've got a future star in Brandon Miller. You've got potentially, if he stays healthy, a future star in LaMelo Ball. You've got it homegrown. Now, who do you surround those players with? Who do you use your mid-level exceptions on? Like, let's go find that. This is not the cap guru guy that they were looking at, Brooke Aller from New York, but let's go find that guy too and bring all of these heads together to figure out how are we going to put a team that can actually go and compete in the Eastern Conference.
With analytics, it being so a part of the very fabric of the NBA now and really all of sports, I wonder truly how much of an advantage you're getting on other teams. Hiring smart people is always going to be a good starting point. But it does seem like here, especially with Seth Partnow talking about the fact that he was the driving force behind Hackathon, which resulted in 20 to 25 guys getting jobs in the analytics department with different franchises. If you're the starting point here, then I'll take that, right? I mean, if you're the driving force behind, right? Exactly, at this age, right? So yeah, if he's going to be able to help in that area, and I know a little bit about the Hornets analytics department. It's pretty celebrated. Like, I think they're highly thought of. So we'll see how they're able to use that as far as going and getting players and making. I wonder just how much they're going to listen to Patrick Harrell, right? Like, it feels like Jeff Peterson would be embracing this. It seems like Gabe Plotkin and Rick Schnall would be embracing this. And so, okay, now you have him in the building. How much is he going to be a driving force to the types of decisions that you make? And if he's going to be involved in that and heavily involved, and I'm here for it. I'm here for a different approach to see exactly how that looks with new management all around.
And as far as I know, Patrick Harrell, other than maybe, watching, ESPN Classic games of Michael Jordan against the Utah Jazz, like, I don't know of any connection from Patrick Harrell to the former regime. And that's what I like. They've been slow about moving some of the people that were and continue to be employed here. They've been slow about sort of migrating them out. But you can see that the influx of people coming in have no connection to that former regime, and I like that. I want new blood. I want creativity. I want youth. I want new thoughts, and that's what all of this represents. I don't know anything about Patrick Harrell. He might be great. Right. He might be nothing, but it's something new. They're doing something new.
And they're doing something also, like your sales pitch. So they're doing something. All right, let's move on. One more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
No, don't sell yourself short. I didn't come up with that. We go through the sicko satchel, but first we do have to do the negative stuff on Miles Bridges. What did we see for Miles that we want to improve on if he is going to come back with the Charlotte Hornets? We'll get to that in just a moment on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL, and baseball's in full swing. FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets. I tried to dabble in the negative with Miles in the first segment. This is the time to do so. And look, Miles was clearly one of the best players for the Hornets this year. If it wasn't LaMelo because he didn't play as many games, I think it was Brandon Miller as far as the guy that we felt good about, the best about, especially in an injury-ridden season again. But Miles was still probably the best player from the end to the beginning, like for the most part, unless maybe you want to put Brandon there. I don't know. It's between those two guys.
Complete player for sure. Like best offensive weapon, that was Brandon Miller by even the head coach, by Steve Clifford's admission. Yeah. That was their offensive guy. But in terms of complete player, rebounder, I mean, this guy was giving you 7+ rebounds a game.
Well, yeah.
Right, right. So if that's the case with Miles, that's all good. There were still problems here. So if you just compare, this is what his finishing line was: 21 points per game. He averaged over 7 rebounds per game. That was actually a career high as far as his average goes. He shot 46% from the field. He shot right at 35% from three on the highest volume of threes that he's ever taken before. 6.5 attempts from distance this year. 2 years ago, his last full season, he actually shot 5.8 attempts from distance. And 35%, 34.9 to be exact, while it's not amazing, it actually is the second best mark he ever put up. 3 full seasons ago, he actually shot 40%. That's his numbers. You actually had 1 less free throw attempt per game this year than he did 2 seasons ago. Averaged more than 4 2 seasons ago. Only 3 this year. So it's better than the beginning of his career, but it looks like he also took a step back. David, when you digest all of those numbers and you just digest all of the film, all the games that you got to watch on Miles Bridges, what do you take away?
Well, that's the thing. He's transitioning into more of the 3-point shot. I mean, those were way up, as you mentioned, and as well as the rebounds. And you put those, the rebounds, especially when Mark Williams went out, they were asking a ton of, Brandon and Grant and Miles Bridges, and it shows in those stats that he was doing a lot for that team. So you expect the efficiency to probably come down a little bit. The biggest thing that I was waiting to see throughout the season was if he had the same explosiveness in his game, and he did not, to me. Now, he didn't have LaMelo Ball out there. He didn't have him creating some of those crazy lob passes that he caught 2 years ago. But that's almost still a question. Like, I don't know. I can't say. We're not in the building. I don't know if anyone in the building can say, that's just not coming back. That's a part of his game that was there in flash, and now he's getting older, and he's not going to be able to jump out of the gym anymore. It's not like he can't dunk anymore. But, some of those highlights he did 2 years ago were crazy. So if that's gone, then he is going to transition into probably shooting a little more threes. You mentioned him missing some easy bunnies inside. Maybe that hurts when you lose some of that explosiveness as well. The free throw attempts you would like to see up higher as well. So, I mean, the explosiveness and the athletic player, that's what made him a borderline all-star and a borderline max-ish level player before all of the off-court stuff happened, right? He was so dynamic in the open floor catching lobs, and he could add some mid-range and some three-point. That's what made him so exciting. And it's not like he doesn't have any of that left. It's just not to an elite level. And I guess I'm still questioning if that's going to come back. But it seems like right now, unless he goes through some crazy, full-blown off-court training and gets back into super shape, that might be a thing of the past. And that's the only thing I think you have to watch out for if you're banking on him being, that guy again.
And it's not necessarily a question that they're going to be able to answer fully before they have to make the decision, really, unless they saw something in practice. Maybe they evaluated it in practice and said, all right, well, we're not seeing the lift even, when he's not in a game situation. Because look, LaMelo being gone, I mean, I don't recall seeing LaMelo, sort of just yeeting Miles Bridges in the air, and giving him a little bit of extra bounce. Like,
need a boost? Yeah. I gotcha.
Yeah, here, need some help, buddy? No, there was nothing like that going on. And so, it is a serious question, because without that, I think he will be limited, because look, if you look at his mid-range numbers, he went from 19% of his shots coming from mid-range in the last year that he played, 21-22, which was a really I mean, both of those years, 21, 22, and 2021 were good years for him. And they featured pretty low mid-range numbers. Then it went all the way up to 29%. 10 more percent of his shots, and almost a third of his shots over the course of the entire season came from the mid-range, and yet he wasn't very accurate in those shots. And a lot of that was coming in, late in games when those shots could have filtered to Brandon Miller, or they could have filtered some folks that were better outside shooters, and instead he took it upon himself, which I guess one could understand, because he is fighting for contract. He is one of the best players on an injury-riddled team. So you understand that a little bit, but some of the shot selection was mind-numbing, and also turnovers. And again, we can filter this through the lens of, well, he had to do a lot, and he was probably passing when he shouldn't have been passing, trying to make plays that he shouldn't have been able to make, but he was trying to drive too, and losing a lot of those balls because they were just getting taken from him and turned into offense for the other team. And so turnovers were an issue. Passing was an issue at times. And like we said, I think we found out who he is and who he isn't, and he isn't going to be a number one featured piece on a team. And so the question is, are the Hornets going to allow another team to go and make that mistake? Are they going to allow Detroit to think, no, this guy can be a number one or a number two because we're panicking about the future of Cade Cunningham? Are they going to let that team make that mistake, or is Charlotte going to panic about the idea of losing what is a very talented player on a team with not a lot of talent?
Yeah, the question is, are you comfortable with him figuring out the old man game as his explosion starts to wane? Or do you think that without that explosion, it's going to be tough for him to be a $20 million a year type of player? And maybe this was the year where he tried to experiment that and jumpstart his improvement in a season where they just weren't going to make the postseason after the midway point. And so you're like, okay, this is what I have to do in order to survive at a $20 million a year type level. And this is something we've seen players go through before. Probably the most obvious example is Vince Carter, who is much more extreme on both ends of the spectrum than what we're asking for Miles. But it's very similar. Like, guys, you're totally right, David, when you bring up the lack of explosion. Everybody knew it. I can't tell you, I'm sure there is one or two or three, but I can't tell you a oh my God dunk like he had in previous seasons where we had about 5 or 10 every single season. And then even earlier in his career, we probably had one every single week. I don't have a oh my God, that was absolutely insane. And if he did get that dunk, then it's not like I remember him jumping over people. The block percentage was also way down this year. Remember how good he was at coming over help side and then just swatting dudes at the rim? You didn't see a lot of that this season. It was towards the bottom in his position group, according to Cleaning the Glass. I think that has to do with, one, just defensive instincts, which are already shoddy, but also getting up and contesting at the rim. So we didn't really see that from him either. How good of a defender can we expect him to be without that lack of explosion, let alone just talking about the offense? Some real questions that you have to ask with him. Still an important player, still is a good player in the NBA. I just want to know, is he somebody that Detroit is going to overpay just to have some help with some younger players? Is he a Hornets player where he's going to be like this third option on what you hope is an up-and-coming team? Or is he like a $15 million, $16 million a year player on a contender?
And by the way, and I know, David, you mentioned that he relatively stayed out of trouble this season, other than the stuff that happened right before the season got started. But if you're not putting the potential of that occurring again or some kind of issue popping up again into your calculus, then I think you're making a mistake as an organization, because we have not seen Miles Bridges in a pressurized situation again. We remember what happened after the last play-in game, right? So, what happens when season's on the line? What happens when playoff series and there's more pressure for everybody to perform? I think that those are legitimate questions to ask if you're talking about, whether or not to bring him back, at a huge number.
Yeah, the Detroit thing, I guess, is always going to be there because of the ties, to Michigan,
and more so just like a skill level example. Detroit has been the team tossed out, but just like a team like that,
100%, yeah. I just don't know if the days of him being garnering that huge, whatever offer sheet or sign or offer from a team maxish level are gone. It feels like they are. But then how much do his words and what he said in his exit interview, he really thanked the Hornets organization really for sticking with them through all this stuff. And they did. And to the detriment of probably some of the fan interest or support, because there are a lot of people that, weren't on board with them kind of sticking by him and bringing him back. So that this is fascinating. I don't know nationally or league wide how much focus or spotlight will be on this, but here it's fascinating to me because it's still within the realm of possibility that some team could go, man, you give them some huge offer, and then the Hornets, who have never had a backup plan for not getting Miles Bridges, are they painted into a corner where they have to allocate more money than they wanted to him and where it doesn't make sense? Do they let him walk and then not have a backup plan? So it's fascinating, really. But, I mean, if in a perfect world, I guess, if you're talking about those two entities, we did something for you here. We kept you on. You came back and played a little bit here. Let's find a that makes sense.
But if we take those negotiations before this season between his team and the Hornets to be any indication of what's going to come up soon, I don't think there's going to be any give. And what I'm concerned with from an organizational perspective is them getting caught in some sunk cost fallacy, meaning like, hey, look, we've taken the PR hit. We've taken multiple PR hits on top of PR hits on top of PR hits, and now we can't come away with nothing, right? Like we got to bring this back. We got to bring this guy back and have some success. So at least we can sit back and go, okay, well, maybe some part of this was worth it. So I'm a little concerned that that's how they're going to view this thing, and it might result in an overpay.
Yeah.
I would certainly hope not, just because I would think they're worried about the wrong bleep at that point. Like if you had Miles Bridges, and the reason I say that is because if you're talking about any kind of sunk cost, whatever quotation mark sunk cost, then you're talking about a Miles Bridges performance that he had 2 years ago when he was a fringe all-star. Mm-hmm. If he was that this year, then you might consider, well, he was just too good. We can't let him go. I don't think he played to that standard. The numbers would show it. Our eyeballs, I can talk. I promise I can. The eyeballs told us that he wasn't that same player. So the fact that Miles wasn't at that level, then you're like, okay, look, if he was, we gave him a shot to be that level. He was still good, but was he good enough to just say, bleep it, we'll throw all the money at him no matter what another team might throw his way on an offer sheet, and then hope that he comes back, and then we use up most, if not all, our cap space on just one player. And the other thing is, we go back to Patrick Harrell. If this guy's actually influencing what Jeff Peterson does,
it all comes back to him.
And then
new guy.
If he influences Jeff Peterson, and then you start to look at the advanced stats, and it's like, well, okay, like I can't justify paying him $25 million like this other team is. Then, the sunk cost would only, in my opinion, be if he performed to the level in which he did 2 years ago, but he didn't. And so now I think it's a lot more palatable to let him walk to another team, despite it being still a very talented player walking to another team.
But you still need the 20 points.
You do.
You still need the 21 points.
Somebody's going to have to score those.
So if I think you're asking Brandon to go up to like 25, and then just LaMelo to stay on the court. And then that's what you're asking. But yes, I hear you. Miles is good. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Go check out David on Twitter at David B. Walker, Doug on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday. Sports Radio 92.7 FM. By the way, Memphis Redbirds, been the Redbirds since 1998, just so you know.
Oh,
salute.
Well, I mean, that was just out of high school. Come on.
Thanks for making us your first listen.